Hi again, Mark here from Talking Bass. Today's another one of those great moments where I get to talk to one of my heroes. Jon Poole is an amazing multi-instrumentalist. He's most well known for his years as guitarist in one of my favourite ever bands, Cardiacs. But as well as guitar, he also plays some incredible bass lines on Cardiac's classic album, Sing to God. Bass lines that had a huge impact on me personally as a developing bass player in the 1990s. As well as Cardiacs, Jon's played with a whole host of different bands including the Wildhearts, Lifesigns and another one of my favourites, the Dowling Poole. Alongside Willy Dowling, they create incredibly catchy pop tunes combined with phenomenal arrangements and world-class musicianship. Today we got to talk all things bass, his influences, and how he shaped his unique melodic style. He's supremely talented, a wonderful human being, and a big hero of mine. So without further ado, here's the fantastic, random Jon Poole. Yeah, I mean, we were just talking just before, and it seems to be that you're one of my biggest heroes. Like I said, I didn't even realize, because I didn't even know that you were a bass player to that extent when you were in Cardiacs. How long have you been playing bass? I mean, I know that's you've been playing guitar a long time, but have you played bass as being a proper bass player all that time as well?
Well, it's a weird thing because I had two brothers, two older, because I'm the youngest of six, so I had two older brothers that were bass players, and one of them is Ed Poole, who is he's done all right, he's done
session
well
bass extraordinaire, yeah,
and it was I really wanted to play an instrument, and I think I thought at the time if I took up bass that they'd just think I was copying them, and it'd be backhander, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I decided, I thought, well, I'm going to play guitar, and I was listening to I'd already kind of heard stuff through my brother, like Louis Johnson out of the Brothers Johnson. I'd heard, and I liked what he did. I'd heard Stanley Clarke, and I liked what he did. And then the first single I bought was "Good Times" by Chic, which is a pretty influential bass line, sort of thing. And I loved the sound of the bass, and how and I now realise a lot of what I liked about it was how it worked with the drums. So that was the thing that I went to immediately. But I thought, I need to play another instrument because I don't want to be competing, So I took up guitar for some reason, and luckily in Chic there was Nile Rodgers, and I really liked that kind of chunky sort of funk style he was doing. But at the same time, I was listening to The Police, and Andy Summers was a bit of a hero at the time. So I was listening to that as well. But I straight away, now in hindsight, I realised that I was hearing everything. I could hear what was going on individually, and I just assumed everyone could. So all the time I'm kind of learning guitar, learning chord shapes and things, I'm still focusing on bass. And so I took up guitar when I was 11, and then I took up bass when I was 14. And I got a proper bass, or what I kind of, because I borrowed a bass for the first year, and then the first proper bass I got was a Westone Thunder 1A fretless.
I had a Westone, not a fretless, but that was my first bass, yeah.
Well, Tim said the Westone Thunder 1A was his favourite bass. He absolutely loved them. But he had the guitar version as well, that green guitar that he used to have.
He had that on Mare's Nest, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry, Tim Smith out of Cardiacs. I'm sort of just saying Tim, like everyone's going to know who I'm talking about. So then, and I spent pretty much all of the 80s and the early part of the 90s playing fretless bass, really. But I was when I was in bands, I played guitar because I wrote songs, and just seemed the logical thing to do. And then I joined Cardiacs as a guitarist, and I was in them for 12 years. But when we started recording, I'd established this bass style that I'd started doing the year before in a band that I was playing in called Able Mesh. And we're just a little band doing gigs, and Tim Smith would come and do our sound. And he really kind of liked the that style of bass playing I was doing, because I was doing that slidey thing then, the slidey melodic thing. And it was really, it was kind of informed from listening to people like Colin Moulding out of XTC, who had a real great slide and a sort of melodic thing. But also, I'd loved Mick Karn when I was a kid growing up, and to some extent Pino Palladino, particularly what he did with Gary Newman actually on that. He did this one album, I Assassin. And then he went off, but that's right, because he left, and Joe Hubbard took over, who we were talking about earlier. And Joe Hubbard, I think, was his teacher or something. I think.
It was, yeah.
So anyway, I had this kind of slidey thing in my head anyway, and it just sort of seemed, and also at the time I was really into Blur. In fact, a few of us, including myself and Tim Smith in Cardiacs, were Blur fans. We really got into them. And their bassist, Alex James, had quite an interesting off-the-wall, sort of left-of-centre sort of sound, and style. And that involved a bit of sliding. So I'd sort of, I don't know, kind of nicked it from loads of places, and then and maybe John Entwistle as well, people like that, and then the whole thing sort of came together, and it was that strange style that I arrived at. I couldn't say what one thing that it was, but I also liked stuff with a bit of attack and aggression, and sometimes playing with a pick as well, like JJ Burnell out of the Stranglers.
Yeah,
I really liked.
So you were playing a fretless then at that point when you first started?
Yeah, that
makes sense then, because if you're moving around a lot, especially with the Pino influence, because like a lot of the stuff that I hear you playing isn't on fretless, a lot of the bass lines I hear, but it's got a fretless, well, the stereotypical fretless kind of vibe with the slides and the melodic, especially I can see now the Pino thing, because when he moves up and he'll put in some little kind of Philly kind of thing, and especially the Mick Karn thing, because a lot of that would just be basically counter melodies, a lot of it, and a lot of kind of a little bit melodic bass playing, because he's not always playing roots and stuff. He'll move up and just play a melodic phrase as opposed to
he was inventing tunes, and without getting a songwriting credit, and Mick Karn once, I've read his book. It's very sad, actually. I think he was quite bitter, really, and understandably so, because I think their singer David Sylvian had kind of taken, he was getting all the PRS, the sole songwriter, but there's a track, Visions of China, and I think he said, when you think of that song, what's the first tune you hum? And it's definitely not the vocal melody, But yeah, I'm so maybe there's something of that. I need to. I used to like to invent tunes, or to have fills that suddenly go into some kind of melody of their own, But at the same time, I've always tried to really stick with the drums, so that it's very kind of it goes with the drums, and I've sort of, I don't know, just sort of try to do all these things. But the main thing is to serve the song. I've always had that in mind. And if a song just requires one note, or a drone or something like that, then I'll do that. It's whatever.
Yeah, because your bass lines aren't, they're not the stereotypical kind of shred fest kind of thing. They're not even like, you'll get someone like Billy Sheehan, who in his rock tunes will be, a lot of the bass lines are very, very basic. It'll be very, root orientated and stuff, and just kind of groove orientated. And obviously you can do all the shredding kind of thing. But yours are kind of like, I mean, I've got to say, to anybody that's not ever heard any of these things, I mean, Sing to God album for me is like, that's like the magnum opus of, Cardiacs that, every Cardiac fan is like, that's the one. But the first one I heard was Heaven Born and Ever Bright. Somebody lent me that, and you are on that, aren't you?
No.
Are you not?
No.
But you joined, hadn't you, at that point?
Yeah. I'm on the cover.
Are you on the cover?
Yeah. It's been a source of amusement for ages, because there's all kinds of kind of rumours that are going around that Bick, the guitarist before me, was called Bick, or Christian Hayes. He's a real good mate of mine, and I got to know him before I joined the band anyway, but got to know him even better afterwards. But he played all the guitar. Well, him and Tim played all the guitar on that stuff. But there are rumours going around that when it got remastered in '95 or something, that they took all of Bick's guitars off, and I went in and added mine, which is absolute nonsense.
Right.
I can't imagine why we would do something like that. But I find this on these kind of fan forums is that people just go mental with inventing stuff, and I've seen people say stuff like "Sing to God" is a solo album and Tim did everything on it, which isn't true, sort of thing. And but yeah, these things kind of make me laugh, I mean, but yeah, it was kind of a bit misleading because I was on the cover, but we were trying to establish the fact that the classic lineup had disbanded and this was the 4-piece, so we were trying to establish that. And I joined while it was being mixed. So I was there when it was being mixed, but the only thing I actually did on that album is there's a track called March, and it starts off with this effect that fades in at the beginning. Well, I faded in that effect. That's what I did on the album. So that was my contribution to Heaven Born and Ever Bright.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sing to God, that's if anybody wants to hear your bass playing, there's some really, really good tracks on that for it. I mean, I'm guessing that Tim probably played. Did you play bass on everything, or did Tim?
No, there's some. Tim played on some tracks. Jim played on about possibly four songs that we'd been playing live anyway. And I was glad he did. He does have a kind of funny style of his own. He's completely unorthodox, and he doesn't consider himself a musician. And he plays he plays
picks, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
I've noticed. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing with that is that when I pointed that out to him, he said, "How do you notice these things?" And I just thought, but I'm glad you noticed as well, because it's he does up. It's like down, 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 down. So it's up, down, up, down, up, down.
And sometimes it's just up, 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 up.
Yeah, it's so weird. And I don't know why. I don't know. Well, obviously, first, that's what instinct told him to do. But
But I mean, there's those. And like I was saying to you before, that the Dowling Poole, which is one of your... because you've got fingers in a lot of pies, but like the Dowling Poole is one of your big projects that you do with Willy Dowling. And,
I've got. Sorry, I'm sorry to jump in here.
Yeah,
but,
go on.
Willy goes mental whenever I call it a project. So
your band.
Because he sees project as being like a part-time thing. So no, it's a band. So it's a band. Sorry,
no, the band. Right.
If I didn't jump in and say that, I'd get told off. So
well, honestly, I've been spreading the word with that, because it's. And anybody watching this, go and listen to all and buy the Dowling Poole albums, because they're just unbelievable. The songwriting on there is just like top notch. I mean, and there's so much stuff going on in there, but it's not, I suppose it's a little bit progressive in some ways, but it's just great pop tunes, and they're all catchy. I mean, there's nothing to, like I said, I put up that Facebook post about it. I can't imagine anybody disliking it. I mean, it's just, because people are always like, "Oh, I don't like that, don't like that." It's like, I can't imagine anybody disliking it. It's so you just a lot of it's feel good. It's just great. But I didn't realize until I started transcribing a few of them recently how much is actually going on in the bass lines. Like I was just saying there, keeping the stupid. I've just been transcribing that today, and again, I was listening to it, and I was thinking about what I would do if somebody had given that to me and I was going to make the bass line up for it. And as I'd already transcribed it, and I thought I wouldn't have played what you're playing at all, because I just know that the standard way that somebody would go at it is they would probably double the guitar parts, especially with the riff based stuff. You just double the riff, and then on the chorus there's like the standard dum 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 kind of stuff, just root notes. And it'd be I think 99% of bass players would just play pretty much the same thing that everybody would play pretty much the same thing. But when you actually listen to what you're doing on there, it's not that at all. And there's like completely, I mean, it's hard to describe because there's a lot of different things going on underneath it. And I was just blown away. So anybody out there that's not heard the Dowling Poole, just go and check out the Dowling Poole, because like everybody that I keep saying, right, go check this out, go check that out. And it's like, I give it to my brother, I give it to my dad, I give it to like everybody. Like one of my mates, we were listening to it, and everybody's getting back to me going, oh my God, I can't believe that I've not heard these. I can't believe that because they all love it so much.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, it's funny with that stuff because there's a certain kind of discipline to it, only in as much as we try and pack it all into songs that are no longer than 3.5 minutes. Some of them push that a little bit, but we try and keep it pop song length, which means that our albums are quite short, because we tried on the second album, on my insistence, by the way, that putting 12 tracks on an album, and it was just too much information, and Willy had said to me that it should be 10 tracks, and I said no, but the albums aren't long enough. I have this old idea that it should fit on one side of a C90, cassette. So 45 minutes, I think, but then it's just a tiring listen if you so we've gone back to keeping them at 10 now. So he was right and I was wrong. But no, I mean, a lot of the bass lines are generally informed by whatever drums go down. Now, if I've written all of the songs are credited to both of us, but it'll be one of us that brings the song to the table, and then we'll work on it together, and then that becomes what the song is. But so if it's a song that I've brought to the table, then I'll have a pretty good idea of what the drums are going to do. So because I played the drums on that stuff as well until recent lockdown recordings we did, where we got Darby Todd. But up until then, I was doing the drums and everything. So on my stuff, I'd have a very informed or preconceived idea of what I was going to do. So when working on Willy songs, which Keeping the Stupid Stupid is one of those, he would then have ideas that he would chuck at me while we were going through and recording the drums, and so it would be a bit more of a collaboration drum wise, and so that would inform the bass, and sometimes he would have little ideas, set ideas of what he wanted the bass to do there. So sometimes some of the odd stuff might not necessarily be me. It might be an idea Willy's got. If you ever hear a drum fill and the bass suddenly follows that drum fill, like literally, but playing weird notes that are from the chords, that's me. That's what I it's a thing that I do a lot.
And there's a run on there. I think you go up like a C Dorian scale. You go and then in. And I thought, well, that'll be you. That's got to be you.
I think there's one song that is the king of all of this that I think set me off on this path of doing that stuff. And it was a track off Sing to God. I think it's called Insect Hoofs on Lassie. It's the one that goes like this. That one. And that one was when we really started messing about. we'd come to a fill and we'd write, stop, let's follow that fill literally with some notes that are in the chords and stuff. And it just,
yeah.
And it's ridiculous. And when you listen back to it, it's really funny. But not in a sort of jokey kind of way. And it's sort of like, that's so
like fun. It's like having fun with it.
Yeah. And it's funny over the years. I mean, this is, I think, why I've when I go out and play with bands now, it's why I've tended to seem to have stopped playing guitar and gone off playing bass, because I always feel I've got a little bit more to offer with bass, because I do possibly do things that are more an extension of my character, and I feel like I'm putting something of myself into it. Whereas when I play guitar, I don't always feel like I've got much of a distinctive style, really. I mean, there's a few things I do. I mean, like, there's a track on Sing to God called Belly Eye, where that intro, there's an intro on it. I don't know if you can remember the track, but it's but I came up with this intro, and it's kind of like a sort of cross between Hendrix and Graham Coxon, the guitarist out of Blur. And XTC. I mean, in fact, I say Hendrix, but I get Hendrix secondhand via XTC. So that kind of to that extent, I have a little bit of a style with guitar, but the bass, I always felt I had a bit more of a kind of something that sounded like me, sort of thing. And I'm not saying I'm the best bass player in the world, or it's really great or anything, but when I record and I put that stuff down, I tend to smile, thinking, "Oh, great, here's some fun," sort of thing.
Seriously, I think it's you've got one of the most distinctive bass voices I think I've heard. It's and that's not just blowing smoke up your ass kind of thing. But
but I've heard you, and you're amazing. So.
Yeah, it's just that it's just a style. I know that there's elements of different players in there, like you said. There's the Pinot thing. But in terms of how you go about creating a melodic bass line from not much. Because some of the actual chord, I mean, it's different with cardiacs because the chord progressions are all over the place. But with the, especially with the Dowling Poole, it's like I said, if it was me coming up with that, or 99% of bass players, they probably wouldn't come up with the stuff that you're coming up with, because it's got that kind of quirky kind of thing going on, and just a melodic sensibility in it that I think is quite unique.
Well, thank you a lot. I mean, that's lovely to hear. I mean, it's funny when I put these things down. I mean, particularly with Dowling Poole, I'll be thinking slightly McCartney-esque, or like I say, Colin Moulding out of XTC. But there are other people that come into play as well. Like, I mean, as well as I like JJ Burnell. But there were two bassists that played with Zappa that when I got into Zappa in 1985, I was 15 years old, so a bit later to it than a lot of people. But and the first lineup I got into was because I was shown a video of this Halloween concert from 1981. So it was Steve Vai, Robert Martin, Chad Wackerman, Ed Mann, and Scott Tunis. Now I was really taken with Scott Tunis. There was something about his playing that had a lot of spirit, and I was lucky enough to hang out with him and meet him on this cruise to the Edge thing, which is a prog cruise that I played on, and we chatted a lot, and it turns out that he does have a bit of a, as well as being into all the stuff he's into, he's got a bit of a punk pedigree about him as well, which I think I have as well. I really like. I mean, I'm into punk and post-punk, new wave, and he has that too. And the funny thing is that I didn't realise it. Not only had I picked up a bit of his playing style, but I picked up a lot of his performing style, because he's pretty funny on stage. He's good fun, good value. And we'd been hanging out all week. I mean, within like 5 minutes of me meeting him, we went for a meal and we were feeding each other escargot. You know, it was like, and I was like, and I was freaking out because these are my heroes, Mike Lee, Scott Tunis, Robert Martin. You know, it's amazing people, and they were great fun. But anyway, he came and saw me play, and he came. The first thing he did was he came up to me after I came on stage and he said, "You stole my moves, motherfucker." Like, oh my God, yeah, I have. And I wasn't even aware I was doing it. And it was him telling me it as well that made me think, shit, I've taken from Scott Tunis.
I know, I feel like that as well. I'm exactly the same because like I'm a massive Scott Tunis fan as well. And I'm like,
oh, great.
I just noticed that when I'm doing it, especially like different little headbangy kind of things that I'll do, and people will say, "What are you doing?" And it's like just like those little quirky things that he does. Well, it's not just little quirky things, is it? He just like leaps around like a lunatic sometimes.
Well, I guess we all watched that. Does human belong in music?
Yeah.
I mean, that had pretty much every standard Scott Tunis move on it, but.
Well, I went to
Arthur Barrow was there.
Oh yeah. I want to interview. I asked Arthur actually about doing an interview as well. I want to get all the Zappa guys that
have you talked to Scott yet at all?
Not Scott yet. I mean, I'm sort of friends on a few things with him, and I've not got to speak to him properly. But Arthur's into it, and like because he's. I mean, I have no idea how he played some of the things that he played. But with Scott, I always loved Scott's playing. But I went to see the band that had been there on the cruise with you. I think they did the Palladium in London a few years ago, and so I went there to watch that. And I mean, for me, it was like, oh my God, I'm getting to see them all, the Ray White and Bobby Martin and all that lot.
Oh my God, yeah.
And because I got to hear his bass, like there, loud and with lots of bottom end, the whole thing made sense to me all of a sudden. I mean, it made sense before, but I always, because his tone on a lot of those Zappa things is very kind of, it's all P bass, isn't it? But it was like very upfront and very grinding and very kind of middly. But when there's the bottom end, when it's coming through the PA really loud, and it's just the kind of the force that he plays with, this kind of forcefulness that he has and this conviction in his playing. I was like, oh my God, this is, I was just in heaven watching those guys.
Well, he's no shrinking violet as a bass player or as a person. I mean, he's immense fun to hang around with. I mean, I imagine there are people out there that wouldn't know how to take him, but I mean, God, I loved him. I thought he was great, you know, and same with Keneally as well. Just a great bloke. And Robert Martin was really charming, quite a gentle sort of soul, you know.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, those two, I mean, great value, good fun. But it's funny, I had an in because it was through, do you know a guy called Jacko Jack at all? He sings with King Crimson these days.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and he... but my brother has been friends with him since the 70s, and they played on Sam Brown's Stop together, which Gavin Harrison played on as well, sort of thing. But anyway, Jacko was kind of my in because the last time I'd seen him in person was at my brother's wedding when I was 13, and I've spoken to him on the phone since then, and then there he is at the cruise, and he's got the Zappa band playing in his band, doing his solo stuff. And it's like, here's my in. You know,
yeah, perfect.
Hello, Jack. I remember me. I had hair last time you saw me.
Yeah.
You know? And he introduced me to him, and I kept apologising for hanging around with them. I kept saying that. They said, we're going to go off to get something to eat. Do you want to come with us? And I said, look, I'm really mindful of not outstaying my welcome. And then I fuck off, you're in the Cardiacs, you know, all this kind of stuff, you know. So, the Cardiacs, as they call it. And it was like, we are not worthy sort of thing, you know. But it was amazing. It was like a dream come true for for a teenage Zappa fan like myself,
Well, that's I mean, I was going to say it earlier on, because like, obviously with, getting to play with Tim and Cardiacs and that,
yeah,
like you were saying about Blur, I mean, Blur are renowned as being Cardiacs fans. They were Cardiacs fans, and I've heard Mike Keneally talk about Cardiacs as well, and it's like there's a lot of these people that. So it's like you're going and trying to speak to these people like Mike and Scott and that, and of course they're all avid fans of Cardiacs.
Well, I mean, oh my God, I mean, I feel so thankful that I played with Cardiacs. I mean, straight off for me, I was a fan before I joined. I discovered them in '87. And through a friend called Andy that showed me the video to Tarred and Feathered, the thing that they did on the tube. Yeah. They'd just been on, so he said, "Look, check this band that were just on the tube," and played me the Big Ship EP as well. And I was just like, and that was it. I was sold. I had no idea that in 4 years' time I was going to be in the band. But particularly as before he showed me the video, he showed me the cover of Big Ship. And I looked at it, and and it's a picture of them all in the makeup, looking a bit mental, and I was just like, oh my God, Jesus! I was really disgusted by it, and thought, I just immediately thought I'm gonna hate this, whatever it is, And God, and when I heard it, it was just like, I can't believe someone's doing this in 1987. To me, it kind of. My initial thing, which I don't hear so much now, was I heard bits of Zappa, bits of Gentle Giant, which Tim had listened to, but it's all part of the, just one little element that might have gone into the machine, but it's, I'm so thankful I got to join them. I was a massive fan when I joined, it was, I guess, it was like on a tiny, tiny little scale. A bit like when Steve Vai joined Zappa's band, which of course is up there and we're down there somewhere. But it was, I was still, you have to realise that I was still in awe of them. I rang up Tim and asked if I could join because I'd just done a gig and he'd come to see it and loved it and stuff. And unbeknown to me, him and his then girlfriend were watching me, and she was going, nick him like that because they needed the guitarist. He was like, he said, I can't nick him from his band. But then I rang him up and said, look, I don't know, if you want me to. I said I'd really like to audition for your band, And he said, well, you wouldn't have to audition. It goes without saying that you could do the job, which I thought. Well, really, and then he said, but I'd need to check it with the others first. So he left me hanging for a few days, and then came back and rang me and said, yeah, I've talked to them, they're not into it. I said, that's all right, that's fine. And they just sort of went, no, only joking, come and meet me in London. And it was just like, what now? I was living in Milton Keynes at the time with my parents, so yeah, jumped on a train, met him a pub called the Spice of Life, which is just next to the Les Mis building. Yeah, and it's funny when I look back on it now because I was still complete. Even though I got to know him a bit, he was still my hero. I was still starstruck, and I was 21 as well.
God, I'm a kid. That must have been weird.
Oh God, I'd come from playing these little gigs in London, like the George Roby, to 18 people, to suddenly going and playing. I think where did we do I think the Ulu in front of 2,000, 3,000 people, whatever it was, and it was just like it was a real kind of shock, but at the time I felt fearless because I was playing on stage with my favourite band and just shut myself into it. Probably slightly too enthusiastically, still had a lot to learn. But it was, but oh my God, it was absolute magic for a 21-year-old kid to join his favourite band, playing music that he absolutely loved and was a fan of, and we were playing the stuff that was off Heaven Born that no one had ever heard yet. So it's all quite an exciting time, really, but never really took it for granted, and I'm now really thankful that the band is probably bigger now than it ever was when we were about, you know. And,
yeah, I think so.
and it's I constantly meet people. And one thing I get quite a lot is I'll go and maybe if I'm in a band and we're playing with another band, I'll go and meet them and say hello and chat to them a bit. And they'll be all right to me, sometimes not that receptive. And then a couple of days later, it'll be, you didn't say you're in the Cardiacs like that. There's always the Cardiacs.
The Cardiacs.
And then they'll completely change their tune, which is sort of annoying because I always like to think I'm the same with everyone, you know, no matter who they are, you know, sort of thing. But yeah, you know, I won't name any names, but there's certain people that have. I thought, God, you changed your tune, sort of thing. But at the same time, it's nice to have that thing as well. It's a bit like, oh, great.
Well, it's kind of like you say, it's a bit like the Zappa thing, because I mean, a lot of people would see. I mean, I certainly do. I kind of see Tim as being the. He's not Frank Zappa. He's a different animal, but or was. But it's the same kind of thing. That I mean, a lot of people compare him with Zappa. You know, the way that he has that. You know, a lot of people throw around the genius term, and they'll say that obviously about Zappa, but you know, a lot of people say about Tim. Yeah,
Saint Tim,
yeah. But it must have been. I mean, I guess that, like you say, it'd be like Steve Vai, you know, auditioning for Zappa. It's at that age joining up with that. I mean, did you find it? How did you find it in terms of playing? Was it hard? Was it normal? I mean, you know.
No.
Yeah.
Well, this is I'm joking, but like when I joined it, I was such a fan, and I was still. You have to. Again, I was 21 years old, so I'm only a couple of years earlier, I think, On Land and in the Sea came out. It was my favourite Cardiacs album. You know, when I go back, I don't listen to the stuff I was on. That should be weird, sort of thing. But I still listen occasionally to the earlier stuff, you know, because I love it, you know. And 2 years earlier, I was still a teenager. I was 19 years old, and I was sat there, and I would learn how to play their songs on guitar and on bass and on drums, so that I could play along with them. And I always had it in my head, oh, God, because I started getting to know them as well, just through going to gigs. And I always had this dream, imagine if I turned up for early enough and they let me into the sound check and somebody didn't turn up and I could just sit in, you know. So I always had this kind of like weird little dream that might happen. So I would religiously learn these bloody songs. So when I joined the band, I already knew most of it already. I mean, but I was given a whole load of new stuff to learn, which was wasn't too difficult. I think the most difficult thing I learned was the sax solo to a song called Stone Age Dinosaurs.
Yeah, I'm making a solo bass arrangement of that tune at the moment.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Well, just all on bass.
Yeah, I'm going to do a chordal one. I started it a bit back, and it was because the chords are so odd. But Stephen Wilson obviously did the mellow cover of it for the tribute
That's right.
album. And so I listened to that, and I was like, man, that'd make a really nice chilled out chordal thing. Yeah, not for anybody. Nobody will care. It's just for me to play on my own. Yeah, I'll probably.
I care. I'd love to hear that. Yeah. I mean, but that sax solo that's in it is obviously you can't stray from the notes that are in that solo, because it all goes around those chords that keep changing, and nothing about the tune itself is natural to play. It's your fingers go to play, and you just have to keep doing it until it clicks. Now this was great, and it was going really well for about God, how many years? 8 years, something like that. Going really, really well. And then one day, in front of an audience, I suddenly got lost in the middle, and there's no coming back. You can't just slot back in. Well, if you lose it, you're just hitting a load of wrong notes, and you just have to stop playing. And it started up. It became a curse. I then couldn't play the song anymore because I was scared of it. And the worst thing was, it happened to Carvis Tarabi, who took over after me. He said he was fine with it. Then one day they went and did, and bless him, they did a live radio broadcast. And that's when the curse hit him on live radio. And it just like, that was it, man. Game over. And once you got that, there's no going back. And it's a real shame, because he used to love doing it. It was done on this kind of bassy pickup sound with a load of delay on it as well. So it always sounded really sort of posh and sort of almost like Pink Floyd or something on guitar. So different to the sax that it was originally played on. And that was, getting back to what you were saying, that was difficult. That was hard.
Yeah, but the chords in that as well, it's just really odd. That, like, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's so weird. You know, that chord progression. I was sat there working it out just for that thing. I'm like, what the hell is this? You're trying to work out where the chords go. And then you're trying to think of I was trying to think of some kind of logical pattern to the whole thing, so I could think of it in a key or something like that. But it's that typical Cardiacs thing where there's a lot of odd, I'd say modulation. It's not modulation in truest sense, but it's sort of the chords, they move. There is a logic to it. There's a kind of ordered, there's some kind of logic to it, but it's not in that kind of stereotypical functional harmony way. It's just goes off.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I think the reason that also playing that on guitar, even playing the rhythm guitar bits, is there's not a lot going on other than chords. You're just playing chords. Whereas, and this is something Tim used to say, is on the more complicated, intricate ones where there was a little tune, a little burst of chords, a little bit of that, you know, it would be, it's almost easier to play than a simple song because every bit is a cue to what's coming next, you know, thing. And so something like the Duck and Roger the Horse, every now and then if I've got my guitar, I'll think, I wonder if I can still play that, you know, and I can. It's still. I don't think it'll ever go away. Yeah. But it's mental. It you know, it's such a weird bunch of stuff stuck together, you know, that shouldn't make sense. But if your head is in the music, then it's just, that's Tim stuff, you know.
It's just ludicrous.
I mean, like as Tim said, it's all just tunes, isn't it? You know, that's why he would never get into any debate about what's good or what's bad or anything like that. He loved the prog thing when it was going, but he loved the punk thing. But he kind of resented the fact that because the punk thing came along, well, why does that mean you have to disregard everything before it? And I know what he means. And to him, it's just all tunes.
Yeah, and I think all the people that I know, for me as well, and I can tell that we've got a very similar taste in music in that it spans many genres, so much so that I don't really think in terms of genre. I hate that, you know. It's like well, like a bit of everything kind of thing. But it, like Cardiacs is very like that, like, because I was into a lot of punk stuff and a lot of metal stuff and things like that. I was into a lot of prog, I was into a lot of classical music and reggae and whatever and stuff. But like Cardiacs kind of has all of that at the same time. But the problem is, of course, as everybody knows, if you're really into punk, you're probably not going to be into prog. And if you're into prog, you're probably not going to be into punk.
I know, it's daft.
It's silly, isn't it? But you know, that's a melting pot in the Cardiacs, you know, all that.
Well, this is the thing that I mean, the Cardiacs fans were so divided as well, because you would get the ones that were just purely into punk and alternative stuff that hated prog, you know, and hated Genesis and stuff like that. Then you get the other lot that didn't particularly like the punk stuff either. But one thing I've stumbled on recently is quite interesting is they all hate Blur. Most of them hate Blur.
Right.
I think there was an interview with what's his name, Dave Grohl, who I met weirdly enough about 20 years ago, and but he won't remember this sort of thing. But he's recently just discovered Cardiacs, and he said apparently Blur are influenced by Blur are influenced by Cardiacs. I can't hear it, you know, sort of thing. And it's like, well, actually, Blur were a huge influence on the Sing to God album. We were all listening to that stuff at the time. One of the tracks, sorry, I'm so rubbish with Dog Like Sparky. Yeah. Okay, that was called Like Blur, where the working title for that, because there was a Blur B-side called, I think it's called When the Cows Come Home, but it was boom, jab, boom, da. It was taken off this Blur song, but that's not the only thing. I mean, the intro to Belly Eye that's all kind of influenced by Blur as well, sort of thing. And I think it was kind of like they paid us, particularly Damon, paid us a lot of lip service during that time when the press didn't want to know.
Yeah,
that I've kind of spent years since, sort of when people are slagging them off, saying, "Well, actually, no Blur, no Sing to God."
yeah,
so.
and I love Blur. I think they're great, and that I think it's most notable in that Modern Life is Rubbish album by Blur. It's like you can hear the influence, the to and fro with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, there's a track called Sunday Sunday that when I met Damon, he said to me that there's this bit in the middle where it speeds up and there's this little organ line that goes, which he said was sort of nods to a cardiac track called RES. So it was, which I thought was really nice of him to sort of say as well. I mean, there was another track they did called, might be Commercial Break or Interlude, I think it was called. It's ding ding and ding and ding and ding and ding ding ding.
Yeah, it's on Baby Driver. I think they've put it on that film on there as one of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's very cardiac-y.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely hear that. And but there's some great tracks. There's a track called Oily Water that's got this kind of big kind of like shoegaze moment in it, big wall of sound that's almost sounds a bit like the band Levitation that big later in with Terry Bickers. And but it was good. I mean, back then there was a club called Syndrome that we used to go to, and quite often you'd see Damon and Graham from Blur there, and they'd go running up to Tim and say, "I really like what you do," sort of thing, So it was a lovely little thing, really. It's a nice little scene.
But you play drums as well, so
yeah.
So when did you start playing drums?
When I was 13.
Right.
I took drums up like the year before I took up bass, and the reason I play keyboards as well, not brilliantly, but the reason I took all of these instruments up was because I wanted to. I never wanted to be in a band. I didn't like the idea of playing live. My idea was that I was going to just make albums, and I was going to do it all myself. I wasn't going to play with any other musicians or anything like that. It was just this kind of real kind of weird focused idea that I had that somewhere along the line I didn't end up doing, and I'm glad I didn't. Because collaborating has been great fun. That's like with the Dowling Poole thing. It's meeting Willy. I mean, I think we both bring something different to the table. And it's I mean, but we both recognise and admire something about the other one.
Because you two are kind of contrasting styles in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, especially vocally, because I mean, you sound just like, I mean, I'm sure everybody tells you this, but I mean, you're so much like Elvis Costello. It's really
this is really weird. You know what? When I was about 13, because I started doing albums from when I was like 13, but with a double cassette deck and making up covers. And these albums exist as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Jon Poole Distorted Images exists, pretentious as it is. 1983, great vintage, But this I had that. Sorry, what you said something and it's
about Elvis Costello. Yeah, you were. Because you've got the contrasting style. Because he's vocally contrasting as well. But obviously the whole thing is a melting pot. It all works really well.
At the time, when people said I sounded like Elvis Costello, I was like, "Oh no, he's the bloke that goes like that," and I couldn't stop doing it. I was just like, "Oh, for God's sake," something. But since then, I've really come to appreciate Elvis Costello and his voice. And I think there's worse people to be compared to. I've had that, and I've had Andy Partridge as well. That's
a little bit, yeah.
But also, I mean, it's. Oh God, I mean, I try and force myself sometimes not to sing in a Cockney accent, and I don't know why when I sing, it comes out a bit sort of like, you know, dropping me T's and stuff like that. But it's that might come from being a Gary Newman fan, because he always sung in that sort of, in the early days, sung in that sort of very sort of London sort of accent.
Yeah.
But I love Gary Newman, you know, and it's, you know, it was something that wasn't cool to like as a musician when I was younger. I've never really gone for what's cool, really. It's sort of, don't really care.
With the, when you're putting the drums down and the, well, just all the tracks down on the Dowling Poole stuff, if you're playing all of that stuff, what order are you putting them down in?
Well, if I hadn't demoed it in the first place, which I did, well, talking strictly about the songs that I brought to the table now, had I not put them down, I'd just sit there and play the drums with the song in my head.
Right.
Like that. But that's going to be weird for Willy, who sat there, who wants to be objective about what's going down, but he has no idea what's going to be going on. So what he'll do is he'll take my demo, put it into Pro Tools, stick a click on it, and then I'll play drums along with the demo, and then just the kind of traditional way, really. Drums, then bass, then we tend to do acoustic guitars before we do any of the other guitars, and then keyboards last, and then vocals obviously at the end.
Well, the reason I ask is because obviously, because you've got, I mean, you answer the question kind of there with the, you know, having it running through your head, but I was just trying to visualize, trying to lay the tracks out. I mean, it's not like you can all play it together in the studio or anything as a, you know, and recording certain tracks. You're going to have to do each one individually, which if it was a pretty basic kind of start or just standard songs, it wouldn't be a problem. But when you actually listen to a lot, there's a lot of little stabs and moves here and there, and I'm thinking, well, how the hell are you visualizing that as it's as it's going by?
This is the thing, when I'm writing a song, because when I write a song, I'll sing it into whatever device I've got with a guitar, each little individual bit. But I'll be getting arrangement ideas straight away, and then I'll be singing those into the device as well, sort of thing. But as I say, I've been doing this since Distorted Images in 1983, an album no one has ever heard, and God, I hope they never hear it. But yeah, this is something I've sat there playing drums, having worked out some kind of loose, well, back then possibly a more loose arrangement. These days, I have more of an idea of what I'm going to do, and particularly if I've demoed it first, then I've got a whole bunch of ideas that I still want to be used, you know. But again, the collaboration process, there might be something Willy says, well, try this instead of that, you know, and so that'll, you know, that's the great thing about collaborating, I think, is when you start listening to what the other person wants. You know, occasionally you might want to fight your corner a bit, but I think that I try not to do that too much, because I think what's the point? You know, what's the point of working with someone if you're going to do that? And I think a lot of magic has come around through the other person just saying, try this, you know.
Yeah.
To this day, my favourite moment of recording with Willy was we did a track called and it was one I brought to the table called Paper, Scissors, Stone, which is off the album. And it's got this kind of wah-wah guitar. So I was playing the chords, and Willy was doing the wah-wah with his hands, sort of wow, 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 wow. And it was just like, you know, I mean, with digital recording, you can sometimes get bogged down with the fact that it's the same every time you record it. If you set a delay that's on the gear that you're using, then it's always going to be the same speed. This was the only thing that every performance was kind of like, it was going to be different every time we did it. And we'd had a few, we were a bit tipsy, and we were taking a bit longer on it than we usually would have done, because it was fun, you know, it was good fun, you know, and he looked so funny when drinking and slumped over this, which he had on his lap, and he was sort of like grinding this thing like it's a accordion or something. And I'm going, yeah, you know, we were that close to bloody high-fiving at times, I'll tell you, you know, which is a very un-British thing to do. Willy would say, no, I wasn't.
I was listening to that song today, just while I was driving, and
oh, right.
I'm not gonna hear that the same now, am I?
Oh,
I'm gonna have a cool vision of Willy with that.
But when you hear that wow, 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 and it's always different kind of speeds as well. But I don't know. I like stuff like that. That it's completely down to whatever goes down.
Yeah.
It can't be changed or dealt with in the mix, or we do it in the mix. You know, it's like, sometimes it's great to sort of, I don't know, make decisions.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that you're not a gearhead, but
No.
is there any particular bass that you use that's like your main thing?
Well, my favourite bass is a Fender Jazz, but I don't use a Fender Jazz. I use a Squier Jazz,
Right.
and I don't know why I use Squier. Maybe it's because I can take them on the road with me and batter them and then get a new one. I really don't know. But what I like about the jazz bass is that I find it more versatile in terms of sound. I like the fact that it's a classic bass, so it's got a bit of a classic sound. But I find that all of these sounds that people go on about, like Chris Squire's Rickenbacker sound. Now, I don't know what your thoughts on Rickies are, but I don't like them.
No, I don't like playing them.
I think they're horrible things. I don't, and they sound clanky. They don't sound good, you know. And I'm a bit like that with P basses as well. I miss the back, the back pickup sort of thing. What I like about a jazz bass is I can get every sound out of it that I want. You know, I can get a punky sound, something with grit. I can play right down the end with my fingers and get a sort of, you know, a bit more of a muso-y sort of sound.
Yeah, Jacko
slap
style.
it if you want to do that, you know. And that's my favourite bass. It always will be, you know. I weirdly enough, I still own a Woll fretless. You know, I don't have much call to use it, but I did use it on Paper Scissors Stone.
Ah, right.
That's on the verses, on the jazzy bits, you know. But other than that, the only thing that I do use is a Sansamp pedal, which actually I happen to have here right now. So it's a this one. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
This thing. It's one of those.
Yeah.
Very easy to use, but I think they sound brilliant. I think they sound great. When I use them I've just come off tour with a band called Lifesigns that are a progressive rock band, and I use that going straight into the desk. I mean, I do have a little amp on stage with me just to make my trouser legs rattle a bit, but I doubt any of that is really going through the front. I don't think it's going through the front of that.
No, it's too risky.
But yeah, Sansamp, and that's weirdly enough. We used a little Sansamp pedal on "Sing to God," which we stuck the bass through, the guitar through. But there was some other stuff we used on the bass as well, like a little practice amp I had as well. Some weird stuff. I mean, it's a funny mix. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on the sound of that record, but it's obviously not the most traditional.
Sing to God?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's not the bassiest of mixers.
No. I don't know. It's not a very popular. I don't think this goes down very well when I say this, but I'd love to hear it remixed. But I don't know how possible it is to remix it because, for many technical reasons, hard to explain. But a lot of it was in the like a lot of the sequence stuff. I think is gone now. I don't know. It was recorded on a system called Pro 24, an Atari program at the time, and which Tim used for far too long. I mean, he ended up using Cubase. I think. Oh, sorry, Cubase, was it? Pro Tools.
Atari.
Yeah, I think he did move on to Cubase for a bit, but then he went on to Pro Tools in the end. But yeah, he was using this Pro 24 program for the Atari for years, and it was always breaking down and stuff, and it wasn't very good. And he used to punch his monitor in the face as well. There's one time he got really pissed off and he punched it, and he said the thing was fell off and was hanging off its lead, and he felt really sorry for it. He felt really
like a wounded animal.
Punching this poor little thing in the face. Sort of thing.
Really... Well, taking things up to more present day, you're playing with Lifesigns, aren't you? So
yeah.
How's that going?
Great. That was really good fun. It's weirdly enough, I've been doing it for 10 years now. But how it came about was my brother Ed Poole, who plays bass with Bonnie Tyler, and now the singer of Lifesigns, who plays keys as well. He's and writes all the stuff. And it's his band. He plays with Bonnie Tyler as well. And so what it was is he'd recorded this album, and Nick Beggs out of once of Kajagoogoo played on it, and he couldn't commit to it live because he was busy with Stephen Wilson and then Steve Hackett at the time. So so they were looking for a live bass player at the time, and they asked my brother to do it. But my brother hates prog rock. But he said my little brother though, he said he quite likes it, sort of thing. And so I sort of went along and did that, auditioned, and I'd never met Jon before, but we become really good mates over these last 10 years,
And you've been doing it that long.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the funny thing about when I started doing it was Nick Beggs had played on the album, so it was some bass and some Chapman stick. Now, I don't play any more than 4 strings. I don't know why, I've just never got into it. So, and a lot of the Chapman stick stuff was lower than that. So now I've got 2 basses. The songs that require lower tuning, I've got one that's, the whole thing is detuned by 2 tones, so with the lowest string being C. And the other one's just in normal tuning sort of thing. But the funny thing about having to learn Nick Beggs' bass lines and then go out and play them was rewinding to when I was 14 years old. I'd seen Kajagoogoo on Top of the Pops, and I was really taken with it. I just thought there's something really odd about it. There's something more to this than what people give it credit for. And I got the albums and the singles, and I really liked them. And that's, to this day, I think they're a much more interesting band than they were ever given credit for. Really great ideas, but I was particularly drawn to the bass. So when I was 14, when I started playing, I sat there learning how to play Nick Beggs' bass lines, and now here I am years later, learning how to play Nick Beggs' bass lines in order to finish job sort of thing. And it was great. And that was just for the first album, which was 7 tracks. And then since then, it's been great because I've been able to put my own stamp on it. We've done another 2 albums since then, and I've been made musical director as well, because I kept telling people what they should be doing. Couldn't keep my mouth shut. Well, why don't you try this? But it's become really good fun, and the latest album, Altitude, has gone down really, really well. We're picking up. It's taken a while, but we're starting to pick fans up now. When we played the last Cruise to the Edge, we played in this huge kind of theatre, and it was packed with people going mental. And we've done that cruise about 4 or 5 times or something. And the first time we went there, no one knew who we were. But since then, we picked up fans. And then also, because it goes from America, most of them are Americans sort of thing. So So it's great. It's been really, really, really good fun. And the great thing is that John Young writes the stuff, but he's very open to input. So I've been able to write my own bass lines, and also he doesn't interfere when it comes to my stage act or whatever, for want of a better word, sort of thing. In fact, he's all for it, So it's and we've, the current lineup we've got with the guitarist and the drummer that we've got, it's really harmonious. It's going well, and it's that's really, really good fun.
Cool. All right then. Thanks, John. That was great.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.